Hello, and we're back. Welcome to day 2 of 2 for Programmatic 101. My name is Kara Modeman. I am the head of education for Google in MENA, and we are here to take you through day 2 of Programmatic 101, which, if you're new and you missed yesterday for whatever reason and you're focusing on today, I'll just give a quick recap. Yesterday was all about the programmatic landscape, understanding a little bit more about the user journey and why programmatic is important and what it can do. And then today we're going, it's a bit more of a technical deep dive. So we're going through Campaign Manager, DV360, SA360. So we're going to get our hands dirty in this, and I think you'll find this session very exciting and very useful. Same as yesterday, today we have our hosts Incubeta, which will be delivering the session. I think they're going to come on just about now. We have Neve Nicliam. Hi, Neve. How are you?
I'm good, thanks, Cara. How are you? It's lovely to see you again today.
Yes, ready for another good day?
Absolutely. I think hopefully everyone who was able to join yesterday enjoyed the kind of initial overview of all things GMP. And as you say, today we're going to take a further deep dive into 3 of the key modules, they being Campaign Manager, DV360 and SA360. So thankfully, lucky for everyone here, I will be facilitating the session with my colleague Jules, who is delivering it. He's the platform expert, so he knows quite a bit about all of these 3 modules. Again, we encourage everyone to ask as many questions as possible. And same as yesterday, we're going to be using our kind of audience engagement platform called Slido for you to ask your questions, and also for a little bit of engagement such as slides and polls and quizzes and whatnot. And I'm going to show you how to access Slido now. So essentially you can take your camera and take a photo of this QR code, and it will take you directly through to our event section on Slido. And there you'll be ready, you'll be automatically in, and you can ask your questions, or you can kind of participate in our engagement pieces. And then otherwise, you can go to slido.com and insert the code PROGDAY2. And to do that, here's a visual version of it. So you can either go to slido.com or slide.do, and you see an area where you insert your code, work away PROGDAY2, and it will take you into the session. But also every time we get to a Slido engagement, the QR code will also come up, so you can rescan then if you need to, and you can also access it on your desktop. And as I say, there's a question and answer or question section within Slido. It's very easy to ask your questions there. We'll get it. And you can also vote up any questions that you particularly like and particularly would want to hear the answers to. So again, like yesterday, we're starting off with an icebreaker. This is just to get your juices flowing and also get you used to using the Slido platform. We've got 3 questions now, so I'd love to hear back from you on. First one, which do you prefer? Very controversial, pancakes or waffles? To ask this question, or to answer the question, you can scan the QR code again now, it's up there, or go to slido.com and input the code. So let's see, how is it all coming together? We've got the definite leaning towards waffles at the moment, though we've only got 4 responses thus far. Yeah, waffles. Personally, I'm more of a pancake fan, I would say, because I think the thing with pancakes is that they can be both savory and sweet, which I kind of like. Waffles are a bit too sweet for me personally. All that cream doesn't really appeal to me. Okay, now we're pancakes have overtaken 50-50. This is very exciting. Clearly the highlight of my day. I'm feeling like I need to eat some pancakes for lunch, and again, they would be the savory ones. Cool. So on that, I'm going to end it there. and we're going to go that pancakes were the winner. Close winner, but the winner nonetheless. And we'll go on to our next question. So with this one, wanted to know, if you joined yesterday, what did you find the most interesting? And you can just, this is a word cloud, so you can just add in whatever you found interesting. Okay. Okay, we have 0 responses coming through. I'm going to give you another 2 seconds. I'm hoping that this is more because everything was interesting. Okay, Slido was interesting. That's great. If there's anything else, and I am going to lean toward the fact that everything was interesting, so very cool. And for the person who said Slido, we've got more of that today. Details of DV360. Okay, cool. Would be more practical if some best practices are going to be shared. Yes, absolutely. Programmatic buying types, great. Getting to know how programmatic works and what each tool does, brilliant. And the waffles. There were no waffles yesterday, they were all today. But great. So I think this leads nicely on to the kind of practical best practices, because we're going to go into the different products today. And within that, I have one last question for you all this morning. And I'd like you to rank the various GMP products that you're most interested in order. So DV360, Campaign Manager, SA360, or you're interested in all of them. Please do go in and rank. Really keen to find out what you're most interested in, what you'd like to learn the most from. All of them, great. Some interesting movement. DV360. Interesting. SA360 seems to be bottom of the list, but DV and Campaign Manager, as well as all of them, I think that kind of maybe leans toward people's leaning toward the more kind of display media side of things potentially, as opposed to just simply search. But as we know, Campaign Manager ties them all together. So that's very cool. And obviously also all of them is up there in third. So great. On that note, I'm going to hand over to my colleague, Julian. I introduced him yesterday, so I won't do that. I won't introduce him again today in terms of his whole bio, but suffice it to say, he's been with us for a while. He uses all 3 GMP platforms, Campaign Manager, DV360, and SA360. He works on quite a few of our tier 1 clients, and he's a team lead, so he trains his own team internally as well, and some of the wider teams. So he knows what he's talking about. Please do feel free to ask as many questions using Slido, and there will be question sections that will address your questions then. Cool. So on that note, I'm going to hand over to Jules.
Great. Thanks very much, Neve. Thanks for that. Hi, everyone. Really great to be here again. So today we are going to deal a little more in depth with some of the platforms. So I'm glad that some of you did mention a little earlier on that you're into some of the more detailed sections of the platforms, as well as best practice and tips. So by the end of today's session, I hope that you'll have a better understanding of Campaign Manager and how to leverage it to elevate your marketing. I hope you're going to have a better understanding of programmatic buying, DV360 and its features, as well as a better understanding of SA360 and its role in the GMP stack. So today we're going to look at our three modules here, and we're going to start out with Campaign Manager. So we're going to take a look at where it fits into the GMP stack. What role does it play? what is an ad server and how does it fit into the system. We're going to talk a little about creative formats, floodlights, brand safety, as well as tracking in Campaign Manager. So this slide is a simplification of the GMP landscape and how the programmatic buying process works. So if we take a look on your left-hand side, we'll see that it's what we're familiar with: the advertiser, the campaign manager, DV360, as well as SA360. And you'll see on the right-hand side is the publisher or the sell side. So essentially, following some of these processes, we can see that we're able to use the tools on the buy side, so Campaign Manager, DV360, SA360, as well as Google Studio, which I'm going to touch on a little later. And we're able to then activate audiences and other insights from GA360, and we're able to then in an auction space, on an ad exchange, Google Ad Manager in this case, we're then able to serve our ads, or to buy inventory and serve our ads in relevant contexts. So we're going to return to this slide a little bit later when we have some more context on this, and we're going to see if we can make a little more sense of how all of these things fit together once we have some more practical understanding. So Campaign Manager 360 is a web-based ad management system known as an ad server, providing a rich set of tools for managing creatives and running ad campaigns. And as we discussed yesterday, there are a lot of other bits and pieces that are part of Campaign Manager. For the most part, at its core, it really is a web-based ad management system with other modules that can plug into it or that are part of it that really help to complete the practical picture of Campaign Manager. So it really is actually the core piece of technology in programmatic ad buying. It's used in a variety of ways to serve the creative, as well as measure and track the creative, and then use that feedback to inform future campaign decisions. So the benefit of using Campaign Manager is that you own your own data with one single cookie across all media. So again, this is something we touched on yesterday, and it really is an important point for us to remember, because it allows us to host and serve a range of engaging media formats and have a single view across all of our marketing activity. So remember, we touched on yesterday about how we can use various tracking aspects to slowly put together a complete picture. And in today's session, we're going to look at some of our reporting capabilities and how we can put those together too. So the ball on the left, the image on the left, is how we as marketers often want to see our relationship with our potential consumers or with users. We want to see it in a linear way, that one user has one single device, that they engage with us 2 or 3 times before the purchase, and we're able to track each little step and see exactly when everything happened. However, that's not actually the case, and making that mistake of looking at it in a linear way can often exclude a large amount of the data. So your consumers move across multiple devices and are exposed to ads via different channels and devices throughout the day. And if we take a brief moment to think about how our own online behavior functions, we can see that at some point you might be on your laptop or your desktop computer, and you might see ads on there, and then later on you're on your mobile device or on your tablet, on your connected TV, and you'll see ads on there. And it's really important to bear in mind that user flow is exactly what's happening, but multiplied by the millions of people across the globe. So essentially, what we're trying to do is find ways in which we can kind of move from looking at trying to find that linear user journey to looking at a much wider flow of user traffic and user behavior. So 2 of the important things about Campaign Manager that we're going to discuss today is, and these are both things that we've touched on briefly. If we look at owning our own data, So we've got one single cookie across all media. So we know that if that user has actually gone, say for example, they have clicked on a Facebook ad, and then they've seen a YouTube ad, and then later on they've actually clicked on an SA360 ad, we're actually able to see that. We're able to see that whole user journey and actually build audiences out of that. And that ties so tightly in with attribution, where we're actually looking at deduplicated conversions. And as we briefly mentioned yesterday, deduplicated conversions ensures that we're not double counting our conversions across platforms. So another really important feature here, Campaign Manager is able to host and serve a variety of creative, and it kind of varies from the most basic banner ad, like a JPEG or a PNG, for those of you familiar with the creative side of things, or a short video, all the way to a complex dynamic creative, which is connected to a platform like Google Studio, for example, which then pulls in various assets to create dynamic ads on the fly based on user behavior. So looking at measurement, one of the most fundamental aspects of a digital marketing campaign is to have a measurement framework in place before we start the campaign. Or as close to the start of the campaign as possible, and so for a number of reasons, one of the most crucial ones is that if we have a single KPI or a KPI framework, we're able to make our changes and optimizations and adjustments based on that framework. So Campaign Manager 360 is really able to help us gain those key insights and to build out our marketing strategy based on the measurement data that we're able to collect. Okay, so just when we're setting up a new Campaign Manager account, one of the important things to remember is how these tracking setups will fit together. And often businesses are more complex than one single business with one single business unit with one single product offering or service offering. And Campaign Manager and GMP generally accommodates for this and allows us several different ways that we could use Campaign Manager in order to track all of our various business units for our advertiser and see how those actually interact with each other. And we'll talk about a little practical example just now. We will go down per level that you're able to see here. So initially we start out with a network, and that's your Campaign Manager 360 network. So what we would generally recommend or best practice here is to create a parent advertiser. And in that parent advertiser, it's essentially an umbrella to which we're able to attach various other advertisers and see how they interact with each other. And that way we are able to create the most complete picture of our attribution. So as you can see in our bottom level here, we've got all of our campaigns as part of the child advertisers, and that's where we're really going to see some of that interaction, as well as at the child advertiser level. Again, we'll put this into some more practical terms a little later on. So when we're creating a campaign in Campaign Manager, as I'm sure you guys understand, that's the fundamental basis here for Campaign Manager is campaigns. So a placement is our essential tracking unit. That's the big part of what we use. So if we look from the top down, we start with our account, where we have our basic settings like our time zone or our currency. And then underneath that level, we would have our advertiser, where we would have our floodlight configuration, which is our tracking configuration for a specific user journey that we have that fits within our business unit. Then we have our campaign, which is usually the execution of a media plan. So you would start out with a multi-channel media plan, and each of those would have a corresponding Campaign Manager placement or tracking tracking asset, which would then be able to, in a way, mirror that media plan's line item structure. The placement, the site, which is the next level down, the site itself refers to a network or a group of websites or a mobile app. However, it is often, it should not be confused with the URLs on which your ads are displaying, unless your campaign manager configuration dictates specifically that. So best practice really does depend on the context. One such example would be to use sites to define a channel or a medium if needed. So for example, in one campaign, you could have a site for your DV360 tracking, a site for your campaign, for your Facebook tracking, and a site for Twitter tracking. And that way you're able to see in a report how those sites are going to interact with each other. And it's a simple way to organize your tracking placements within your campaign. So the word that I've said a lot here, placement. So it is essentially it refers to the position within the publisher's content. So if you have a really straightforward potential way to think about it is to look at a placement as an ad unit size. So we're looking at say, for example, a 300 by 250. So again, to kind of explore this process, we would say, if we've trafficked a 300 by 250 in Campaign Manager, we're able to serve that in DV360. And the way that would work is that through for example, Google Ad Manager Ad Exchange, we would then be matched with a placement of 300 by 250 size on a publisher's site. And effectively, that's where that's what that placement communicates, effectively what is inside that ad unit, so that in the ad exchange we're able to buy the correct inventory. And then the next level down is the ad, and this is a way to group similar creatives together. So for example, if you have multiple variants of a similar creative, you can group them together as multiple ads within one placement. And again, best practice here does determine, or best practice here is determined by the context, and there may be various reasons for you to create a varying structure of your ads, because Campaign Manager within a placement does allow you to actually rotate ads on a specific basis. So you could rotate ads by priority. So this ad, for example, is more important than that one. So for every 3 times this one shows, show this one once. You could rotate them based on click-through rate, or you can also set a number of impressions that ad will show before it's actually disabled. You can also add in start and end dates there, so that's a really useful feature. And then our final level refers to the creative, and this is the message that we want to be viewed by the users. So this is essentially completes our trafficking structure, and the creative is what we would at the end of the day refer to as the actual banner or the actual video, and it's all part of the ad, and then the placement and the site and the campaign structure. So the creative is effectively what we're when we say a banner or a video, that's really the creative itself. It's not actually the ad or the placement. Those are really frameworks to hold that creative, and to kind of pass on all of the targeting settings and other settings to the sell side platform and to the ad exchange. Okay, so how does this actually play out in a bit of a practical situation? So we can see here on the left, we've kept our names that we've just spoken about: our campaign, our site, our placement, our ad, and our creative. And then on the right, we have a screenshot of an existing trafficking setup and what it really does look like. So we can see right at the top, we've got ABC Publisher, and that's the site. just for a little key, it has a little globe next to it. So each of these different levels has a little icon just to help you visually recognize the difference. And then each of these items has an ID as well, and that ID can be quite important when looking at data on a large scale. That site ID can come in handy. It's also used, that the site ID is also used to sync your advertiser to sync this part of your campaign to your DV360 advertiser. We're going to touch on that a little later when we look at the relationship between Campaign Manager and DV360. So moving down here, the next thing we've got down, ABC Travel 160 by 600, that's our placement. So as I mentioned, our placement has our size in it, and in this case, it's a 160 by 600. And when you set up the placement, you're able to actually determine what size that placement will be. So what follows on from that is, as you can see, the 160 by 600 default web ad. So what that does is it's a backup in case your primary ad does not serve. So when you've created for example, like this, a banner setup, there will be a default ad created. The default creative that you assign to that, it is generally best practice to use a different format creative. So and when I say a different format, it's often that you would need to use a JPEG or a PNG in that as a default ad. And that's because if your HTML5 or dynamic creative does not serve for whatever reason, there is a mismatch, targeting mismatch, or some other reason not for it not to serve, it would serve the default ad. So if your default ad is the same format as the primary ad, and the primary ad doesn't serve, there's not a very high chance that your default ad would serve. If the cause of the lack of serving is obviously the same there and is related. So what we can see from a little further down there is we can see our next placement, which has been created, which is our 300 by 250, so another common size. And then we see again our 300 by 250 default web ad, just in case our primary ad does not serve. And in this case, you can see the creative has been the 300 by 250 pterodactyl. What a great name! Pterodactyl creative has been assigned as the default creative here. And then the best dynos, the 300 by 250, you can see that's our ad that we've created, and you can see there are 3 creative variants in there. So now what will happen is when we link this to DV360 and we assign and serve these ads, it's actually going to rotate the 3 ads between, your 3 creatives within that ad itself. So that way each user is exposed to an equal number of impressions of each creative. And as I mentioned, we can actually go in and manually change the way that those creatives are served, and we can add priorities, or we can add frequency caps. So that means don't serve more than X number of impressions on this specific creative. Again, also we can add in dates there if we want to rotate those around automatically without us having to go back into platform, unassign, reassign, and retraffic creatives. Okay, so our next slide here does refer to how we can put Campaign Manager 360 and DV360 together. So it isn't a simple process of clicking on a button and the link automatically appears. You do need to connect on certain levels, and that will allow for various features to be passed between platforms. So as we can see here on the Campaign Manager side, we start out at our highest level with the account, and on DV360 we've got the partner, and those two are not actually directly linked to each other. Where the link happens is we actually talk about our parent or master advertiser, and then that gets linked to the advertiser in DV360. And through that, we can pass down our tracking pixels, our audiences, and a variety of other pieces are passed back from DV360 to Campaign Manager as well, for us to complete our attribution picture in Campaign Manager 360. So as you can see then in Campaign Manager, we've got our child advertiser and our campaign, and those two are not directly linked to DV360 as themselves as modules. However, the site as I mentioned, is exactly where we're needing to link to our DV360 advertiser. So your site ID there is really vital, because that is what you're going to be adding into your settings to ensure that your campaign and trafficking setup from Campaign Manager actually pulls through to your DV360 advertiser. And just a little note on that, sometimes that link does take around 24 hours, especially if it's a new link. If you put in a new link, it can take 24 hours for your creatives to show up in DV360 from Campaign Manager. However, if that link does exist already, and it has been created a few weeks ago, months ago, days ago, whatever the case is, it actually does generally pull through between 6 and 12 hours, sometimes less, sometimes more, depending on the volume of traffic going through Campaign Manager at that time. So just something to bear in mind when you do get to running and building DV360 campaigns with Campaign Manager. Bear in mind that sync does take a little while to pull through. So the next level that's linked directly to DV360 from Campaign Manager is the placement, ad, and creative unit. So as we saw on our previous, I'm just going to pop back to the previous slide quickly so we can demonstrate. So this unit, together, your placement, your ad, and your creative, is exactly what pulls through to DV360 as a creative. So it won't actually tell you everything that is inside that placement. So if you have multiple creatives in an ad in a placement that pulls through to DV360, you'll just see the placement name that's actually going to rotate those ads automatically in the background for you, in Campaign Manager for you. So when we get down to building campaigns in DV360 and we assign creatives, we're assigning the equivalent of the placement in Campaign Manager. So taking a look here again at a real life kind of scenario of how this fits together, we can see right up at the top that we start out with an easy to follow navigation where we can take a look at all of our campaigns, all of our advertisers, and then our administrative section. And further down, we can actually look at our real trafficking setup, and we can see how our site illustrated with the little globe, and our placement illustrated with a small yellow icon is then part of our bigger trafficking setup, which then will pull through to DV360 for us to be able to assign those ads. And what's going to happen in this one is we can see that we've actually got two ads in here, standard V2 and test creative V2, test 300 by 250 _UK. And in that, we've got one creative, and in the second ad, we've actually got two creatives there. So that's going to be rotating based on whatever rules we do set up for those ads and those creatives to be rotating. So just to point out what we've got here, we're able to see various bits and pieces about the information of the campaign, including the campaign name and the advertiser when we're in this view. We're able to see our site, our placement, our ad, and our creative as we've just gone through. So now I am aware that this was quite a chunk of work for us to go through, especially if we're not particularly familiar with Campaign Manager. So I think it's time that we go ahead and ask some questions and see how we're doing out there, and if there's anything else that we're needing to cover and go through from our side as well.
Cool, thanks, Julian. Back for some questions now, and we've had a few coming through. Hang on, sorry. Right, questions. We've had a few coming through about Campaign Manager. I'll ask. There's about 5 or 6, so I'll ask 2 or 3, and then we'll see how we go. First one is, why do advertisers choose to use ad servers?
Why do advertisers choose to use ad servers? Okay, so so the alternative of not using an ad server is using a relatively integrated platform like something like Google Ads, for example, where that whole process is largely integrated. There are some technicalities behind how that actually would function and include its own ad serving aspect to it as well. However, with programmatic and in the programmatic universe, an ad server allows us advanced capabilities that without it we actually couldn't use. So as we'll discuss a little later on, there are a lot of capabilities in DV360 in terms of uploading creative and actually running the creative through there, and not necessarily needing to have an ad server like Campaign Manager. However, with Campaign Manager, as I briefly spoke about now, with some of the options that we have for rotating ads, it's a really powerful tool to automate a lot of what we're doing without having to actually manually go in ourselves and change that kind of thing. So again, you know, there are some of these options available on those kind of simplified platforms like Google Ads and the Google Display Network. However, the connected, or the connectivity, I suppose, the connected ability of an ad server does provide us with access to more inventory, as well as providing with those advanced automation options.
Cool, thanks. And I think then that leads nicely on to the next question. We touched on this a little bit yesterday, but we mentioned that you could, you know, track maybe social media or email campaigns through Campaign Manager. So how is that done, given that they're not natively linked? How would you do that?
Right. Okay. So, and spoiler alert, we're going to go through this a little bit later, but I'll give you a little sneak peek. So basically, the way that would work is what we've been talking about in this last section is we've been talking about an actual creative, an actual banner, or an actual video, which is obviously different from tracking a click on an email or an impression on YouTube, for example. So one of the important things to remember is that, as you mentioned, these things do not natively integrate with themselves. So that does mean that we're needing to, I suppose, use the structure of Campaign Manager to really track this kind of thing. So we would use something called a click tracker or a tracking ad, and what that does is it, to skip over some of the kind of real technicalities of it, it creates a tracking code which is then applied to either a button or to the actual creative that's being served, and allows us to track impressions or clicks. So that would mean that we create a click tracker, which has a few fundamental properties. One would be that it includes the UTM that you might be using, or any other kind of tracking code that you might be using and have appended to the landing page. And it does also include your DCLID, which is your double-click ID, and that is unique to this session. And really, that's what the powerful tool is that that DCLID is what we're able to then you know, pull data from and evaluate later in our attribution channel.
Okay, cool. Another question, there's quite a few here today. What is the difference between cookies and device IDs?
Okay, so a device ID. So we function usually with cookies rather than with device ID. If we look at everything that kind of works within, and we'll touch on it a little later when we get to our reporting section, we do look largely at unique cookies rather than any kind of device levels. There is a bit of a logic behind that one, and that's that we're actually not really able to access a lot of the specific unique cookie information about this specific cookie itself. A lot of that information is kind of withheld for privacy reasons, and that applies in various ways in various markets. However, there is, I suppose, the kind of the contextual explanation here is that there is always going to be some kind of overlap between device ID and cookie and user in terms of this. It's very difficult to get a unique, neat user flow between one single user across all of their devices, and one conversion path. So yeah, we generally do stick more with the cookie side of things, and that those are kind of the numbers that we're able to work with in Campaign Manager.
And given that the cookie is imminently crumbling, what does that mean?
So there are various. What does that mean? I think we're actually discovering it kind of on an ongoing basis, and there isn't really a hard and fast answer. We're finding that different platforms, I suppose we could call them, are dealing with the cookieless future in different ways. And so some are looking at using APIs in order to track conversions that way. So looking on a more closed kind of circuit or a closed scale. And others are looking at doing opt-in for cookies and browsing history, etc., and then using advanced automation and machine learning to extrapolate. Okay, well, if the people who are in this pool, in this cookie pool, have these things in common, perhaps we can look for more people who have those things in common, and kind of use AI more and more to kind of draw those things out. The other kind of process behind this is actually to move away from using cookies from a targeting perspective. And then, you know, that conversation needs to still kind of happen on the tracking perspective, and how we're going to work around that. But like I said, there are different, I suppose, platforms, really you could call them, with different kind of solutions to this as we're moving forward. However, new information really on a daily basis about how we're going to deal with it.
And I suppose that's also why, you know, we would always recommend that brands and advertisers start building up their first party data, so that they've got quite a large bank of data that they can work with.
100%. A lot of the recommendations on best practice that we do make in this realm does feature around how we can build up accurate and clean first party audiences that we can later activate in their first party situation, but as well as build lookalikes or similar audiences of those users, and really start to explore some of those audiences. And I'll give you some great tips on how to do that in DV360 a little later on as well.
Right, I'm going to take that as a hint, and we'll move on to the next section, which is our next quiz. And just a reminder of how we can join, which is use your camera on your phone to scan this QR code, and it will take you directly to the quiz section in slido.com, or else you can go to slido.com either on your phone or on your desktop and insert that code ProgDay2. So, and that's a visual representation of what that looks like. So just under joining as a participant, add the code there and it will take you through. So now we want you to join the quiz, and I think you should be asked to add your name. So please do. And I'll see how many. I believe we've got quite a few people in the training.
I think I see the winner there from yesterday. Oh yeah, Neil, really? You weren't here at the end of the session. I think Samara won yesterday, so that's very good.
Oh really?
Yes, yeah. I'm very interested to see the competition hotting up today.
Okay, great. I won't join myself because I would come last, even with the inside track and the answers in front of me. I'd probably switch last. Okay, we got 11 people, 13. I'd love to get it up to about 20 at least. So I'll give another few seconds. $16. Okay, I'm going to call it there. We've got 16 in the quiz today, but you can still also join later on. So please do if you can. First question, you've got 10 seconds, less time than yesterday. Which of these products is part of the GMP suite? DV360, Google Docs, or YouTube Premium? 10 seconds. Yeah, 90% got it right. DV360, Google Docs, and YouTube is part of Google, just not part of the GMP suite, though. DV360 is correct. And our yesterday's winner is on the top of the leaderboard. See how it goes for the rest. What is Campaign Manager 360? Is it a web-based ad management system, website for low-cost flights, or a spreadsheet with 360 lines of campaigns? Very good, 100%. I'm so glad no one went for the low-cost flights or the spreadsheet. That would be bad. Okay, move on. Oh, didn't get the leaderboard, but select the benefits of CM360. Is it you own your own data, single cookie across all media, serve engaging formats, or all of the above? All of the above. Excellent. Most people got this right. And ooh, we have a new leader. Samar will have to try better to get back up there in the next one. And Sohail, I hope I'm pronouncing that right. And Noor, I'm hoping I'm pronouncing that right as well. 3 out of 3, but everyone has 3 out of 3. It's just, this is like fastest fingers first, I think. So you got to be quick. We've only got 10 seconds today. And yeah, that goes back to Jules now, I think. I'll hand back to him and he will take you through the next section.
Great, thanks very much, Neve. And well done to everybody on the questions. Cool, so we're going to talk a little bit about the trafficking applications as we've kind of alluded to a little bit in the kind of first part of today's session. So, pardon. What we see on the far left is we see what we've just been speaking about, where we're going to have our full, our site, our placement, our ad with our default ad, and our ad with our creative. So those are called standard ads, and that's used to serve and measure display or video creative across across DV360 in the kind of most common application. So an example there would be a banner or a video, and then that would sit within its full trafficking setup. The next one along we've got here is click trackers, and these do exactly what the name suggests. They track clicks. So effectively, we're able to create a click tracking setup and send off what are called click tags. And these tags are then applied either if you're tracking, for example, social media, and to go down into a really specific example for example, on Facebook. Once you've created your campaign and your ad set and your ad, where in your ad where you're able to add the landing page URL, pardon, you would put in your click tracker, and that would be the code that's going to include the two things, or the two things I mentioned earlier. That would be your tracking tag, your UTM, or any kind of tracking medium you're using there, as well as the double click ID, the DCLID. And the DCLID really is the thing that kind of associates that session with the data going forward. So some of the applications here, like I mentioned, Facebook, Twitter, emails, anything with a landing page, you're actually able to implement a click tracker. And to think a little outside the box, you're actually also able to implement click trackers in scenarios where, for example, you're using a QR code. So with our Slido, for example, we could implement a click tracker there, and we could actually see how many people are scanning that code. So we do have quite advanced capabilities with what we're able to do with click trackers and how those are applied in the kind of wider ecosystem. Again, email is a great example. So if you have, for example, an email with 3 sections in it, and one section is about booking a holiday overseas, another one is about buying some new luggage, and another one is about buying a pair of comfortable walking shoes for your trip, for example, you're able to then track all 3 of those buttons or those sections, and you're able to see where the majority of the use of the interest is. You're also able to build audiences from that perspective as well, and start to really start to activate that data. So really powerful capabilities coming from click trackers. So looking at tracking ads, so this goes one step further than a click tracker. It tracks impressions as well as clicks. Some platforms do allow for a tracking ad placement, so they do allow for impression tracking and for click tracking. There are not a lot of platforms that reliably and cost effectively are able to do that. So, pardon, the majority of applications there, if we're running a YouTube campaign, while YouTube does work within DV360 and also Google Ads, within DV360, it doesn't necessarily function within the same structure as other campaigns. So there are additional tracking capabilities that we are needing to include in YouTube campaigns built in DV360. So in this case, we would want to track impressions and we would want to track clicks. We would want to see if a user saw our video and then later on did a Google search for us, for example, or went directly to the site, or if that user later on clicked on a social banner. That's where the power of these tracking ads will come in. And again, when we get to our reporting section, I'm going to touch on that a little bit and show you an example of how some of those things actually work. And then our last section is we've got HTML5 and dynamic. So we're actually able to connect to to software like Google Studio, which to kind of simplify it a little bit, holds a group of assets, connects with external platforms, and then works with Campaign Manager to determine which of those assets are needing to serve to create a dynamic creative, which is then designed to actually drive increased click-through rates and engagement through advanced personalization. So just some of the examples here. We've got our standard creative formats that we've spoken about. We've got our HTML5 display. We've got our rich media, which is some of the more interactive banner types. We've got our video ads, and we've got our custom creative that we're able to create. So really, depending on your scenario, you would be using any combination or all of these, and all of these can be included in one campaign to actually create a much more complex and rich tracking setup. So something I have mentioned, which is a relatively, I suppose it's a topic really on its own. So we're just going to talk through a little bit of how it functions. How do we collect data in Campaign Manager? And one of the major things is a floodlight. It is the core of how we collect our data in Campaign Manager. And you can collect any real data based on floodlights. So we would create a floodlight, and it really does work like a large light that shines light on the page. And then we can create various activities which can be linked through Google Tag Manager in order for us to track on-site activity. And we're gonna delve into how those will fit together. So floodlight tags can be divided into two sections. There's two different kinds. The counter tag, which by the name suggests, it just counts what's happening. So this floodlight is used to count user activity on site. Counter tags can be used to track all data through a standard counting method, or unique data, or per session data. So based on your context, you might want to only track per session data, or per cookie, or you would want to track all website data, or just each time a unique event happens. And then our next section is our sales variable. Our sales floodlight tag, and what that does is, again, by how the name would suggest, is it tracks revenue. So revenue, transactional data. And we're also able to track the number of items sold there as well. So if you're in an e-commerce environment, your sales floodlight tag is really important. And then generally, any environment, the counter tag is important to track things like button clicks or page views, anything along those lines. Anything that's kind of trackable, or any call to action on a website or any activity can be tracked with a counter floodlight. As well as floodlight activities that are then implemented in Google Tag Manager. So just talking about how important our floodlights are and the practicality of what we're able to do with them. is we're able to collect audiences. Our first-party audiences are built through floodlights, and then we're able to say, this is the floodlight. This is the floodlight activity. It's a click on the call me back button, for example, on an insurance website. And then we're able to create an audience of users who have clicked on that call me back button. And we're able to see how many people have done that. And we're also able to then, once we've got that audience, we can use various tools to explore that audience and see what kinds of users are making up that audience and what kinds of users we should be targeting in our other marketing efforts to extend our success in that range. The other really important aspect of floodlights, and this is what we've kind of spoken a lot about, is conversion tracking. So we're able to measure the effectiveness of campaigns by tracking actions that users take on the website. So we've spoken about KPIs and how relevant they are to running a really tight and good campaign. If you're able to report on your specific KPIs, so that might be lead form completions or page views, or button clicks or sales or whatever the case may be, Campaign Manager provides the framework, the infrastructure to report on those features. So just an example to illustrate some of the important things that I've been kind of going back and forth with. And we have an important, let us go back a couple of slides to highlight one of the really important aspects of advanced floodlight capabilities. And here we're looking at what's called a custom variable. And a custom variable is a piece of is the ability of the floodlight to carry a piece of information that otherwise would not be passed on with that session information. So, for example, if somebody were you wanted to know where the user was when they clicked on your campaign, or you wanted to know if that user was part of your loyalty club or not, or if you wanted to know that if that user had signed up to receive further marketing communication from your company after completing a contact form, you're able to identify and pass that specific information on in your floodlight report using a custom variable. So again, a really useful tool to enhance the capability of your floodlights, to not only take data about session activity, but to really take more contextual information like user's location, or the referral page that the user came from, or the referral medium that the user arrived on site with. So you're able to add up to 100 custom variables per floodlight configuration, and usually they would the way that you apply those would vary depending on the context of your campaign as well. So rushing ahead to this slide, we can see that on the left-hand side here, we've got our types of conversions, and I've just given us a couple of examples to talk through. So a sign up, a newsletter subscription, a purchase, an add to cart, and a competition entry. And then I've given the type of floodlight that should be implemented in that scenario. And you can see that signups and newsletter subscriptions, as well as add to carts and competition entries, it's just a counter. We're just counting how many times this event has happened. But purchase, you can see there that I've included sales. So the floodlight type for sales will now track revenue and quantity purchased for that purchase conversion action. And then the additional information that I've included on the far right hand side here is going to be passed down through U variables, or a custom floodlight variable, as we've discussed. And some of that information could be your user type or your gender. It could be the newsletter type or the subscription type if somebody's signing up for a newsletter. And then you could find out more about the product information or your shipping information if, on your purchase floodlight, et cetera, et cetera. So there really does become, there really is a lot of value in adding in custom floodlight variables to build out the context of each conversion, and not just understanding that a conversion happened, but understanding where it came from, what other information we can get from that user. So we're going to discuss something that is becoming more and more important, not only in the programmatic world, but across the internet, and that's brand safety. In our case, keeping our brand safe, and Campaign Manager, as well as DV360. But in this section, we're talking about how Campaign Manager provides features for us to actually go ahead and implement a lot of brand safety features, which will help to keep our brand safe, to make sure that we're not displaying next to content that is potentially against our brand, or something that's really not got the user in the mind frame that in that purchasing kind of mind frame. So with a massive scale of programmatic advertising, we were buying quite literally millions of ads across millions of sites on a daily basis, it becomes increasingly difficult to actually monitor all of the content on these sites on a manual basis. So to minimize the risk without reducing our reach and performance too much, GMP has come up with an automated feature to really assist with this. And so how do we ensure that your brand isn't being displayed in the wrong context? And how can Campaign Manager kind of step in to assist with that? So Campaign Manager has a feature called verification, which then goes ahead and actually checks out what's on the content of the page and does flag when there is inappropriate content. So as I say, there is the Campaign Manager aspect and there is the DV360 aspect. So there really are the major difference between these two areas of brand safety is your Campaign Manager is post-bid and your DV360 is pre-bid. So what that really means is that before the bid is made, DV360 is establishing whether or not it should make that bid based on these factors. So blacklists, negative keywords, excluded content and category, and third-party brand safety. So there are organizations and kind of businesses out there which are providing third-party brand safety abilities, and that's really when you're really moving into an advanced level of brand safety beyond what GMP is safely able to offer. So the difference between pre and post bid, to return to that, is that so DV360 before it actually submits a bid for a piece of for a placement, it's going to say this bid does not apply. This placement actually falls within this category, so therefore I'm not going to bid on it. So in that sense, that way DV360 is actually saying before you spend the money, let me talking about DV360 like it's a person. DV360 will take a look at that impression and actually say that there's a strong chance that that's not going to match a lot of our brand safety features that we've put into place. So the post-bid filtering works slightly differently. So once DV360 is already bid on an impression, it means that Campaign Manager then takes a look at that impression, and if it can pick up that on that page there is content that we have tried to exclude already, it's going to then serve either a brand safe creative or it's going to serve a blank impression. And that way your brand, it's a last line of defense really against serving your ads in inappropriate places. So that might be there could be a transportation accident, for example, and you could be advertising a new vehicle or something of that kind of distasteful nature, where there is a level of sensitivity needed, and you're not able to kind of manually put up with that or manually deal with that. So in Campaign Manager, this section is called verification. So verification, you can think of it as a way that it verifies the impressions, and if the impression cannot be verified as good or correct, it's going to then block it, and it's going to then allow us to see how many of our impressions were actually blocked based on various characteristics. So it might be that some of our impressions are blocked because of Campaign Manager has established that the website contains a lot of political news, and we might not want to show up around political news. or there might be some sensitive social issues that we don't want to show up around. The campaign manager will scan that content and actually block the bid, block the impression post bid, and serve a blank impression. It will then report in this window that how many impressions have been blocked and why. We're then able to take that information, and we're able to then go ahead and include that information in exclusion or block lists going forward, which means that if we include that information in our block lists in DV360, so we say we know that that website was not content safe, we're going to take those lists of websites and we're going to put them as an exclusion in DV360 to say do not serve ads on these websites. So that way we actually filter it out pre-bid, so we don't pay for the impression, because the unfortunate aspect of the campaign manager verification is that you actually have already paid for the impression. So it's really important to be using these two tools hand in hand, to be looking at what the verification is telling you about the quality of your impressions, and then to be feeding those flagged domains and apps back into DV360 to be excluding them, so you filter them out pre-bid, so you don't actually spend any money on them. So some of the aspects of verification within Campaign Manager, we spoke a little bit about ad blocking, and we've spoken a little bit about kind of the rest of these these topics, especially around the spam filtering. So that's a really important aspect of this, is that there are a lot of spam websites out there. That's the reality of it, and we need to do everything we can as advertisers to try to avoid advertising on those spam websites, because we're really providing we're providing our users with a substandard experience. So verification can really help with that aspect too. So sorry, I went backwards there. So to speak about our invalid traffic, so Google removes invalid clicks and impressions produced by automated services that aren't human users. So that's a really important aspect of this, is that Google is able to recognize which users are humans and which users are potentially bots, and exclude that traffic from your campaigns, which will improve the return on your ad spend, but it's also going to ensure that you're bringing relevant traffic and actual human users to your site. So traffic is removed pre-bid, and it was never bid on. So some of the things that we're able to use in DV360 now as kind of part of our brand safety toolkit, we're able to use blacklists, negative keywords, content and category solutions, and content and category exclusions, and third-party solutions. So let's take a look at blacklists. So you're able to create what's called a channel or a list, which includes a list of domains where you don't want your ads to serve. So that might be a long list that you never want any of your ads to ever serve on any of these domains or these particular pages, because of there could be a long list of reasons. But DV360 provides this block list feature. So what's really important here is this last sentence, which is what we just kind of touched on, is aligning your blacklists or your block lists with campaign manager verification. So ensuring that what's coming up as blocked impressions in campaign manager is actually being added to your blacklist in DV360. And that way you are going to filter out those impressions pre-bid and not pay on them. So a really important aspect there. So negative keywords, relatively similar to the blacklist. Negative keywords, you're going to create a list of keywords that you don't want your content, you don't want your ads to show up next to. So that would potentially be again, keywords that either your brand is not wanting to show up next to, or are just generally not safe keywords. So if I just think of an example here, like downloads and file sharing, those kinds of related keywords are really where you're not wanting to show your ads on kind of those kinds of downloads and file sharing websites might not be where you're wanting to be showing your ads in general circumstances. So you might want to exclude those keywords. Again, just an example. Really, it doesn't necessarily always apply. different scenarios will have different different aspects to what you want to include or exclude. So looking at our content and category exclusions, we can avoid types of websites that are flagged for sensitive categories. For example, adult content or content that's rated for mature audiences, we might not necessarily want to actually show up on there, because even though adult content might not necessarily be totally inappropriate, it might be verging on questionable content, and we don't necessarily want to be showing up anywhere where our brand could be called into question, where somebody says, "Ooh, did you see the ad for this brand next to the ad for next to the article for the specific kind of adult content type of scenario." I don't want to get too specific into examples. I think a lot of you could use your imaginations to see how these things can play out. And then our thing that we touched on very briefly just now would be on our third-party solutions. So using fee-based, so there is an additional fee involved in this fee-based verification technology to enforce brand safety thresholds. So that's really looking at a third-party provider who's able to provide these verification solutions at an additional cost. However, there is, if your client is looking at a really brand safe environment, we would encourage looking at third-party brand safety solutions. So DV360, this is just a nice slide which shows us some of the options which are available in DV360 for us to have a look at. And one of these options is called the Brand Controls Hub. So effectively what we're able to do here is we're able to have an overview of how brand safe our campaigns are and which campaigns are not brand safe, which exclusions or inclusions we're using, and we're able to have an overview of some of the best practice methods here as well. Cool. So we're just going to touch a little bit on reporting in CM360. So the reporting function of Campaign Manager 360 provides comprehensive data for all your campaigns. So as you can see on the left, the screenshot does provide us with a little overview of performance. Here we're just taking a look at impressions. We're able to filter for a variety of advertisers, campaigns, your site, or your activity. So in this case, your floodlight activity. So that might be button clicks, it might be newsletter signups, it might be purchases, and you're then able to see how many sessions had conversions on those specific activities. As with other Google platforms, we can change our data range here as well. And we're able to export this as a sheet or as a CSV, which is a really handy feature when compiling big reports. We're also able to, as you can see on the right-hand side here, we're able to create more complex reports, and these complex reports are also could be seen as offline reports. And then we're able to put in a variety of filters, metrics, and dimensions in order for us to get an overall view of our campaign. So we're able to put in a single campaign and then ask to see, for example, how the sites interacted with each other, or how many clicks one site got, and etc., etc. So really kind of endless features on reporting. So what this really means is that we're able to see click and impression data from creative and click trackers and how they've actually interacted with each other. Even further than this, we're able to use Campaign Manager for future planning to see, okay, well, we understand that a lot of users engaged with social and YouTube, so let's channel our budget and our efforts onto those channels to really push our marketing efforts further. So an actual real life example of how we're able to see these things fitting together. So on the left-hand side, basic channels, which I'm sure a lot of us are familiar with. So search, display, click trackers, etc. So they look a little different from what we've seen in GA or Google Analytics before. And that's because we've got the addition of click trackers here. So there we're able to see conversions came from users who clicked on search ads 4 times, or users who clicked on click trackers 4 times. Conversions also came from a user who was exposed to display and then searched 3 times. a user who searched 3 times and then was exposed to a click tracker. So the click tracker in this case could be some kind of dynamic ad. It could be some kind that's served outside of DV360. It could be some kind of Facebook or Twitter campaign, which is then retargeting that user to try and get them to come back to the site. So where it gets really interesting is if we take a look at the image on the right-hand side, the screenshot on the right-hand side, where we can see that YouTube and search interact quite a lot. And we can see if we go down to the 4th line, we can see that one user, or sorry, actually 477 conversions, so 477 purchases resulted from a user journey which started out with 2 Google searches, another Google search, a 3rd Google search session, a YouTube impression, and then 2 further Google searches. So again, the process is not necessarily linear for the user to go from wanting to buy the item to actually purchasing. You can see they go back and forth between platforms and channels and that's where the value of Campaign Manager really sits, is to evaluate these overall bigger funnels and see how we can put together a clear picture of attribution. Okay, so after another long chunk of information, I hope you guys are staying with me. We're going to have some questions so that I can see where you guys are going. Cool. So I think we're going to have Neve pop up on screen for our questions. Ta-da! Are you on mute? I think Neve's on mute.
And now?
Now we can hear you loud and clear.
Technology. Okay, cool. So I have a couple of questions for you. Why are there bots clicks? And what's the percentage?
So I'm not actually sure of the kind of the official answer on the bot click kind of ratios. However, what I can say is from my experience, it depends on where on the kinds of inventory we're serving, on the kinds of campaigns we're serving. Usually the number is relatively low. Sometimes less than 1%. Sometimes I have seen crazy scenarios where it has gone higher than that. But generally the bot traffic is relatively low, and I think DV360 and Campaign Manager as a whole are really good at picking up that bot traffic and ensuring that we're only getting those actual human clicks.
Okay, cool. Another question: is it possible to apply brand safety on all campaigns? So whether it be YouTube, display, audio, etc.
Okay, so brand safety can be applied across any creative that is served from Campaign Manager. So where that gets where it won't work, for example, is with a click tracker. So if you're on Facebook, for example, brand safety won't necessarily be able to function there because it's not actually viewing an impression. It's related to a click. But for everywhere where we're tracking impressions, we're able to apply our brand safety. So that applies to video, it applies to audio, applies to, as I mentioned, DV360, and 1 or 2 other environments as well.
Okay, cool. And then I think leads nicely on to the next question, which is, when we track in Campaign Manager, can we generate a comprehensive report on what we're running in Google platforms versus other media players too, like Facebook or Twitter, etc.?
Very good question. Yes, no, totally. I totally understand the question. Right. So it really does come to how you set up your Campaign Manager. As I kind of gave an example a little earlier, I would say that kind of scenario that you're proposing there would work really well with using sites as your kind of channels. So to have in your campaign, you've then got one site which has your placements for Facebook, one site which your click trackers for Facebook and those placements, one site which is for DV360 and has all of your creatives there, one site, for example, for emailers, and one site for example, for publisher campaigns. So perhaps you're running a publisher deal where you're actually serving inventory with a specific publisher on a popular network of theirs. And then what you're able to do is you're able to run a report where you're able to use site as one of your dimensions, and then you can see how each of those sites perform, because then you're gonna have called it something like no, I can't think of a good example. You're going to call it Banner Creative is your one site. You're going to call another site Facebook and another site emails, and then you can see how many clicks those or how much traffic each of those generated, as well as how they interacted with each other in your attribution reports.
Okay, cool. That's cool. That's great. Thank you. Another one is, what is the difference between blacklist and content excursions?
Okay, so a blacklist in our case,
exclusions even. Sorry.
a content excursion is when you take people on an adventure to look at content. No, so a blacklist refers to a list of URLs or apps, so websites or apps that you don't want your content ever showing up on. So that could be because the sites are spammy, or because it's you found it's always had terrible performance from that site. Whatever the context might be on that, you're going to want to add those websites to a blacklist. Whereas content exclusions look at specific content and exclude that. So for example, I want to exclude all content about football, or I want to exclude all content about dogs and cats. For whatever reason, you might want to do that. To drill down at the dog and cat example, if you're running ads for cat pet food, then you might want to exclude dog websites, because there's no point in showing cats food on dog websites. Again, many ways to kind of think about that, but yeah, that would be the key difference there.
I nearly said that there was many ways to skin a cat.
I stopped myself from saying that.
I could hear that coming. Or going back to our initial question, if you were trying to sell pancakes, you might want to exclude waffles. Waffle focused websites or waffle focused recipes.
Apps. There might be people who've got apps about how to make their favorite waffle, or they're just sharing waffle pictures. You know, and you would want to exclude that.
We don't want to be there with our pancakes. Cool. On that note, I think we'll go ahead to the next quiz. So let's see. You can join scanning the QR code. I think there were 24 in the last. So if anyone still wants to rejoin, please just go to the quiz section, the interaction section on Slido, insert your name, and you can join. So let's see. What is verification in CMDP or CM360? Is it validating impressions, or brand safe, checking your Google password, or verifying that the landing page is working? Let's see. 100% brilliant. That's 18 out of 26 answered that one. Validating that your impressions are brand safe. Using the lead. So Hill's in the lead still. Samara's come back up to second. What are the two kinds of floodlights available in CM360? Are they click and session, counter and sales, or square and round? I vote for that one. Let's see. Counter and sales. 86% got that correct. Thankfully, no one went for square and round. And we didn't get the leaderboard, so that'll be a surprise for next time. No leaderboard coming up. Sorry, folks. Wait, let's see. Wait. Ah, there we go. Noor is in the lead. And everyone's still a lot. The first 4 or 5 out of 5, and it's dependent on how fast you are. So excellent. And so we're going to take a quick break now. Oh, we're back to this one. But we are going to take a quick break, 10 minutes. So let's say if you come back at essentially 25 to the hour, and we'll see you then. Thanks, everyone.
everyone. Welcome back to the session. Thanks very much for sticking with us so far. And I hope you guys managed to stretch your legs after that nearly hour and a half long session. Cool. So we're going to, in our second section today, second, I suppose, part of our session, we're going to be talking about DV360, and we're going to gloss over a little bit of what we went through yesterday with Programmatic and with DV360. We're going to talk about using the marketplace. We're going to talk about ad canvas, brand safety, which you've kind of touched already. And we're going to look at bidding types, audience module, various targeting options, as well as some other bits and pieces. So first off, let's start with a nice clear definition of what DV360 is. Display and Video 360 is a Google-owned demand-side platform, a DSP. So it's the opposite of a sell-side platform. So what we're able to do is we're able to channel the demand for advertising space through DV360. And so it's set up with all of our partners and advertisers. And that way we're able to control the demand. And through DV360, we're able to manage our reservation, programmatic, and programmatic guaranteed campaigns across display, YouTube, video, TV, audio, and several other channels, all in one place. And essentially, it really becomes the consolidated tool for actually managing the campaigns, the business end of the campaign. So an integrated solution for end-to-end advertising, a tool to streamline and consolidate the media buying process. As we're going to see, DV360 does allow for a wide variety of creative types to be run, and then to really help to get those creative types to work together. So that's either creating a funnel, or that's creating some kind of exclusion system. You're able to get these creative types to kind of work together. So just a question that did come up yesterday that I thought we could. I had a really great slide for it, and I thought I would bring it up now. So what is programmatic media buying? So programmatic media buying involves the automated buying of advertising space. This involves a buy side and a sell side, as well as algorithms and other tools to maximize productivity and efficiency. So that really is a relatively neat summary of how programmatic buying actually fits into our kind of marketing universe. And the next slide is one that I brought up at the beginning, and I said I was going to bring it up again just now and hope that we have a little more context. So I think now when we look at this, we maybe have spoken about a few more of these aspects, and we actually can really understand how this slowly does fit together. So again, on the buy side, we have the platforms that we're familiar with, and now I think we understand a little more on the sell side about how they interact, how we get pre and post bid filtering, and all of those kinds of things. I think verification was a good step into looking at how these things fit together. So some of you would recognize the slide from yesterday. Just to go in again into DV360 and take a look at some of the deals that or the buying types that are available, and kind of the differences between those. So just briefly, we'll start out on the right, and we'll go with the least control from a DV360 perspective. So we have very little input in terms of buying or audiences or bidding or creatives or anything like that. Would be a tag guaranteed deal. Then we move across slowly as we go to the left. We get to more and more control from an advertiser's perspective. On the far left we have open auction, where it's effectively our targeting and unreserved impressions, and in a major open auction floor. Then we've got our PMP deals, or private marketplace, on the second from the left. And we've got, there is a smaller auction, but quite a similar environment to the open auction. So it's a private auction. So there are a limited number of buyers and sellers, limited number of buyers and a single seller. And in the preferred deal, which is the middle block here, we've got it's really a one-to-one relationship. You've got fixed pricing, but you still do have unreserved impressions. So they're not the publisher hasn't said, or the seller hasn't said, we'll give you X number of impressions for this amount. That really is a feature of the programmatic or programmatic guaranteed, or the PG deal. And that is a one-to-one relationship with the buyer. It's fixed CPM pricing, much like the preferred deal, but where they differ is it's got a specific number of impressions that you're buying. You're actually signing up for a specific number of impressions. So we went through Campaign Manager and how it fits together with its various levels of organization. So DV360 has a couple of modules which fit together in various ways, and they can be broadly defined in these kind of 5 bigger categories. So we start with our campaign, where we can build and execute a cross-channel media plan. So in one campaign, you could have YouTube, and you could have audio, and you could have banners, and you could have standard, you could have native ads as well. And that way you can kind of view your campaign as one single unit and optimize across your entire campaign. Inventory. We can discover high quality inventory from top publishers. We're going to look at some of those a little later, some of which I think you'll recognize. Audiences. So we can manage our audiences alongside our media buyers, and we can delve really deep into specific granular targeting. And from a creative perspective, tie the creative strategy to our data and our media plan. So really activating powerful creative against informed digital data strategy, and then draw the insights that we need to run better campaigns going forward. So just some of the important, one of the important kind of little features of DV360, which I think I would really like to share with you guys, is just about the targeting capabilities from a campaign creation point of view. So these are the actual kind of options that we have in platform in DV360. So we can see when we look at our content, we start out with what we just discussed: brand safety, apps and URLs, keywords, categories. So there's it's kind of looking at some of those topics we've spoken about. Then we're moving down into our environment, which really does refer to whether we want to be showing in the web environment or in the app environment. So there is a lot of buying opportunity in the app environment where users are highly engaged, and a lot of data is coming out at the moment to suggest that users are more engaged in apps than they would be on the mobile web. So there is a lot to explore in the kind of environment abilities there. Position. This refers to where, quite literally, where the ad is on the page. So some abilities here would be above the fold or below the fold. So that would be when somebody opens the web page, is the ad easily viewable, or does the user have to scroll before they get to see the ad? So just some context on that. Obviously, everybody wants to be above the fold in the best position, which means that that's the most expensive place to display ads. So it becomes a bit of a give and take of, all right, if we want to show up at the top, we're going to be paying more, and we want to see what the return is on that, and if it's worth us continuing that. Viewability refers to something quite similar, but how much of the impression is viewable in the user's window when the impression is measured, and this is measured on a percentage basis. Some websites will have better viewability than others, and again, it comes down to optimizations to ensure that you're really using the viewability technology to the best of its kind of benefit, and that would be starting or using it in its algorithmic context, and starting out at your viewability restrictions of, say, I want 40% of my creative viewable when the impression is measured, and slowly over, as you're reaching those milestones of 40%, 50%, you can continue to move that up kind of 10% every week or so to get to the point where you're serving 90% plus of viewability on your impressions. That's really where you want to be, but jumping it straight to 90% will drive up your costs and drop your performance. Whereas over time, if you allow DV360 to slowly find the sites where the best viewability and performance is, it will actually help your performance improve over time, rather than I suppose you could consider it shocking the algorithm with kind of those hard limits. So language, quite self-explanatory. If you're in a country which speaks multiple languages, there is a kind of conversation around whether to include those multiple languages or whether to just leave your targeting as all languages. Various tests in various environments have led to different results there. In some cases, you might find that targeting specific languages excludes people, and in other cases, you might find significantly better performance by going after a specific language. If your creative is in a specific language, say, for example, your creative is in Arabic, you would really want to look at Arabic users, or at targeting Arabic users, because of the lack of potential interchangeability between first language English speakers and first language Arabic speakers. So just really a functioning example there. Again, not a hard and fast rule at all. It really is just based on the context and where you're seeing your best performance and responding to seeing that best performance. So moving on to our audience list. We're used to talking about those audiences, those first and third parties, as well as your custom audiences and your lookalikes and your customer match lists, your YouTube users, et cetera, et cetera. So people who've engaged with you, as well as third-party audiences that, for example, are provided in DV360 by Google, like your life stages audiences, or your in-market or your affinity audiences. So geography also is relatively self-explanatory. Talking about, pardon. Your geography, talking about exactly the geolocation of your specific users. Your demographics, talking about age, gender, parental status. In some markets, please bear this in mind, it is in only some very specific markets you are able to target using income level, but that's largely unavailable in the majority of markets. So looking at our technology, we can take a look at browser. So that would be your browser type. So that would be, for example, Google Chrome or Safari or Edge, anything, Opera Mini, anything of that extent. Your device would be mobile or web, sorry, mobile or desktop, or your connected TV or your tablet, for example. So again, write down quite specific to how your campaign is running and what the goals are. Sometimes advertisers find that connected TV is good to exclude because users don't click. However, in an awareness campaign, your connected TV might be a really powerful tool because it might give you a low-cost way of reaching users in an environment where they are highly attentive. So it really does come down again to your contextual, your context and just kind of understanding your optimizations around that. Connection speed. So say, for example, you have a very high-end product. There is potentially a discussion around access to high-speed internet and income level, you could say. So potentially users who have a higher income would be able to connect to the internet with a higher speed, and therefore might be interested in a more expensive product. Again, just really a story that we can kind of put together through DV360. And a lot of these targeting things, as you may be able to tell from my explanation, are really stories. How we put together that story and build out that unique user profile of that really specific user, because we can overlay all of these targeting capabilities together. So we're able to say, I know that users who have a fast connection, who are people who are in a specific Google audience between this time and that time, and they're on these specific apps or websites, I know that those are my most powerful users, so I'm going to create targeting to hit those specific people. And I know it's going to cost me a little more, but I know that those are the people that are most likely to complete the action that I want them to complete on my site, whether that's a sale or a contact form completion or simply awareness. You've got really a wide range of targeting capabilities that you're actually able to overlay to find those really potent users, those really relevant users. So DV360, an actual worked example of how these layers would fit together. So as we discussed a little earlier, we've got our partner, advertiser, campaign, insertion order, line item, and our creatives. So if we look at a kind of definition almost of these things, or how we would suggest using them, we can see that our partner is what you would set with your Google contract. We've got our advertiser, where we're talking about getting more into specific things. So you would have something maybe like your business unit or your product offering and your market, or some combination of those. So your campaign name would include your information up until then. So your advertiser name, the product, the name of the specific campaign, the objective, as well as the run dates. And the reason to try to include as much of that information in there as possible is that you're easily able to identify in your reporting and in your attribution which campaigns perform the best effectively, or the worst, or kind of evaluate them from that basis. So ensuring that you've got stable and sturdy naming conventions is really important within GMP, because of how all the information is viewable in different platforms. You're really wanting to keep those naming conventions really neat and tidy. Then down to your insertion order level, we would be looking at a campaign strategy, a channel, inventory type, and the date. Again, this is not a hard and fast rule at all. We're just talking about some of the ways in which you could use some of these features. Our line item, then we've got our targeting settings and the details around that, and our creatives would then refer to either what we've trafficked in Campaign Manager or what we've brought in DV360, and that would really be the actual ad that's serving there. So the worked example here, as you can see, we have used Adidas to kind of illustrate with a brand that I think most people would understand their product offering. So we can see that our partner is set as the global Adidas global marketing. So we understand where that sits. Then as we go further down, we can see that we've included all of the information which is going to provide us with those key insights, which we can then action. So really focusing on those naming conventions again, I think it's it really ties into this. It does reduce the need for manual reporting and reduces your navigation time in platform, because you do understand where to look for things, what you're looking at, and how to find the rest of the campaign. So again, sticking to those naming conventions in that order are really important. So it allows for better decision making when we're looking at an easily organized and set up campaign. That way, it's easy for us to gain our insights and actually build on them. And lastly, it's less worries when you're out of the office. If you've built a good campaign that's stable and sturdy, you know that it's easy to hand over to a colleague, or to allow it to run for a few days without actually being monitored, because of the number of controls that you put in place, as well as the easy ability of a colleague to pick up that campaign if you're going to be leaving it for more than 2 days or so, just because of your universal nature of your campaign setup, as well as your naming conventions. So let's take a look at some of the more interesting things here, and let's take a look at some of the formats that are available in DV360. So as we mentioned, you can run YouTube, display ads, native ads, in-app ads. So again, reaching that really valuable in-app inventory. TV on actual either streaming services or on actual TV. Video ads, so that is outside of YouTube. That's actually video ads on other websites. So Gmail ads as well, which is a feature which is slowly being reduced in its use. And then we've got our audio ads as well, which are going to kind of explode in popularity in the years to come as more and more users are spending their time on audio streaming platforms, and we're able to kind of reach those users there. So some of the available publishers and deals that we have. So this is really just a snapshot example of some of the publishers that are available. We do have, or there are really specific publishers available for each region, and those are really when you're going to get into that nice specific inventory that's really relevant to your users in your geographic location or in your interest segment. So some of these you may have seen around. Around the internet, so we're able to. So Spotify is one of the bigger ones. Hulu, SpotX, Verizon Media. So we're able to actually engage with these publishers and these deals and buy that specific inventory. Again, I would really encourage you to look at what is available for your specific region and your specific vertical, because it does really go down into the content, the region, and the verticals. So the next thing we're going to touch on is some of the creatives that are available in DV360 and what's called the format gallery. So the format gallery is, in actual fact, a place for us to look at some of the creative templates that are available. In DV360, we're able to design several kinds of creatives to serve across a wide range of inventory. And we're able to put it together, you know, like our classic video or our classic display campaigns through building creative from the format gallery, as well as actually looking at some of the more advanced kind of creatives where we're looking at the swirl or the flipbook or the panorama. When these, we're actually interactive and they're actually they have been proven to drive higher levels of engagement with users across various platforms. So a big strong part of this is Ads Canvas, and so we're going to look at how this builder allows you to create custom variants based on various templates, and then use rules which allow you to target these variants at specific creatives and also roll out creatives at a really high rate. And we'll touch on a case study just now which really kind of underpins why that's important. So it's a relatively new space. It's come around in the last kind of 18 months to 2 years. A relatively new space for creative teams to add assets and design custom and dynamic creative variations and save drafts for later teamwork. As we can collaborate on those drafts and we can collaborate on published creatives as well. So a wealth of additional data signals are available, and we're going to take a dip into some of those available signals. And we're going to look at how we can actually use that to really drive some data-driven media. So what's a really important aspect about Ad Canvas and these kinds of creatives is that they work hand in hand with a piece of software called Google Web Designer, which does help us to build the layout and essentially create all of the templates and work within there, and then that is uploaded through Ad Canvas, and we're able to make those changes in DV360. So looking at one of the great features of Ad Canvas and why it is possible to develop such a range of creatives in a shorter space of time is that we're able to select all of the sizes that we're interested in using. And it will actually create those creatives, those creatives for us, which we can then input our background and our text and our landing page and whatever other assets we have for the creatives that they can be included in there. So you can see some of the sizes that we've spoken about today already: the 300 by 250, the 160 by 600. What is an important thing to note here is that this creative, because it's created in DV360, it automatically creates a placement and campaign in Campaign Manager for you to track, so you don't need to double your tracking setup. So what's uploaded in DV360 is automatically created in Campaign Manager for you, and you're not actually needing to double traffic these creatives. So that's a really, really handy little tip for you. And the creatives would be called the same in Campaign Manager as what they're called in DV360. So, so here you can see that we do have a pretty basic interface within Ads Canvas. We can see what is called one creative, and then we can see our 4 variants. So here the variants contain different, I suppose you could call them characters, in a way that's put together that may allow for additional rules to be included, which is going to say, cool, let's serve this variant to these kinds of users and this variant to those kinds of users. So from an asset perspective, we're able to add our assets in the top right. Under the asset section, you can add or remove your logos and your background from the creative here. In our text section, we're able to use HTML markup to put text on the creative itself, as well as potentially control the size of the text using that HTML markup. The position of the text is controlled in Google Web Designer when we design our templates. We're also able to control here the landing page URL, which is really important, as well as the content for the call to action button. So again, one of the important things to recall here is that these creatives are going to create this process is going to create a tracking setup for you in DV360. So it's important that at this stage, you just put your landing page with your UTM. If you're using a UTM, that's what you're going to put here into your landing page URL. And it's automatically going to generate that double click ID, that declid for you. And then the style just refers to some of the overlays that are on the image. And again, most of the stuff is controlled in Google Web Designer rather than here, as we do have more availability of tools there. So something I mentioned is that, as you can see, there are 4 variants here. These are all part of one creative, as opposed to there being 4 separate creatives. So now when you assign this, you actually only assign one creative, and you can't see that there are 4 variants in there. So it's important that we're going to take a look at the rules, and we're gonna discuss how best to put those together. So as I've been saying, there are rules which sit in these creatives. So once the creative has been built, it is time for you to insert the dynamic rules. These are rules or settings which really control who or where or what time the variant is seen. Say, for example, you're an airline and you have one variant for a tropical island holiday and one for a snow holiday. You could then target your tropical island variant at people who are interested in beach holidays or trips to Hawaii. And the snow variant, you could then target at users who are interested in skiing or winter holidays or trips to, say, for example, Switzerland. So that ability to target individual variants, as you can see on the right-hand side, so you're able to assign your audience and then which variants that audience is going to see. On the left, we can see in our signal picture, we can see add signal picture. We can see that these are the various signals we can add. So you're able to add a specific audience list, a category, a location, so a geographic location, a schedule. So show this ad between this time and that time, for example. And or on this date to that date, whichever way you want to look at it, and then your line item. So that is the specific targeting setup. So that's for example would be a line item that targets users of this specific audience. I only want this variant to show on that specific line item. So again, you're able to have this advanced control over which variant is shown to which user based on a variety of signals. So we're going to look at how this data-driven creative actually potentially has some real-life implications. So we're going to talk here about one of the Think with Google case studies that is available for everyone to go and take a look at. And I would encourage you to go and take a look at some of the great case studies that are on there, not only from a GMP or DV360 perspective, but also from an overall kind of strategic overarching thinking perspective. So in this case, we're taking a look at the Department of Culture and Tourism for Abu Dhabi and their goal to drive and increase awareness around Abu Dhabi as a tourism destination for the UK and in Germany. The challenge here was to successfully deliver a relevant key message to several busy and overexposed audiences. So this is a common problem where we have our users that have been exposed to a high number of advertising campaigns or a high volume of advertising collateral. And they develop some level of banner blindness. So how do we reach through that? How do we have unique creatives that are going to speak to our users, not only on a fresh creative level, but also on a personalization level? So the approach here was to use a weather API. So applying weather data to personalize the creative and the artwork, as well as kind of personalize the text on there. So looking at people who are in the UK or in Germany, potentially being in cold and rainy weather, and then offering them a 25-degree holiday destination just 6 hours away. So that really worked on a number of levels because it had creative that stood out from the rest of the noise, and it also had a high level of personalization. That's looking at your specific location, and it could actually be the point where you like look out the window, you're like, wow, it is rainy and 12 degrees. You know, and that kind of connection really drives a higher engagement rate. So they use DV360 bidding to maximize efficiency and optimize audience and site performance. So using some of DV360's advanced bidding algorithms, you're actually able to maximize the performance of your campaign and achieve lower cost results at higher results rates. So the result here was a 300% increase in click-through rate over their benchmark, a 400% increase in the UK over the benchmark, in their click-through rate, and they found that people booked for 34% longer than prior to this marketing campaign, and they actually spent 35% more on their accommodation and hotel stays compared to the regular destination communication. So we can see here that not only were they able to at scale reach users, but they were able to create multiple ads and really drive a much improved results landscape for the campaign. So the next little example that we're going to look at here is about GSK, who were looking at who had noticed in their kind of in their environment that a 40% increase in multivitamin searches in Saudi Arabia had taken place between 2019 and 2020, and they were trying to see in what ways can we reach these users and actually get through to potentially new audiences, and how can we capture this increase in demand. So they set about by running marketing campaigns focused on 3 multivitamins, and they use first-party data to better understand their audience group and really create focused ads around those very specific audience types. So one of the really important factors here is that they were able to use DV360 to create more than 70 dynamic ads, which then catered to individual audience segments and featured assets like background or text, which spoke to that those specific users. So GSK, through this campaign, managed to reach 25 million users, which is around 75% of the Saudi population. They saw an increased click-through rate of 44% when compared to the benchmark for their industry and that region. They also they made all of this possible by really leveraging that first-party data, and I'm going to show you some tips and tricks on using that. by looking at traditional key customers, by looking beyond these traditional customers, they were able to find new markets, and using DV360 to scale these variants and these creative is a powerful tool to include in your display strategies going forward, because of the scale at which we can develop creative and make it personalized for specific users. Great, another long chunk of information for everybody. I hope that we're all still awake, and I think it's time for a couple of questions, just to see what we've got out there.
And here I am back again. Cool. So we have quite a few questions for DV360. I'll just get stuck in. First one is, how do we know which publishers are available in the Middle East and North Africa region in order to buy their inventory programmatically?
Okay, so that's maybe that question probably, I think, deserves some nice context. So I think, as we said, we've got our variety of deals that we could look at. We've got our open auction, where we don't actually need to necessarily decide on any specific publishers. However, if we are looking at kind of nice inventory on specific publishers, we are able to filter through inventory in DV360 using the inventory tool, and that does help us to discover publishers by country. So then you could look through the kind of MENA publishers, and some of those would be, for example, Rotana, MBC, and DMS. But again, some things that you could filter through in platform and find some of those publishers that are really relevant to your geo.
Cool, thanks, Julian. Another one. Can we create content for other publishers on Ad Canvas, or is it restricted to only Google?
Good question. Good question. So it is largely so in again, another question that probably deserves some lovely context. So taking a step back, we're able to create the data-driven creative, for example, something from Ad Canvas, and we're able to serve that across a variety of exchanges. So that would be across all of your publishers. However, where the difficulty comes in is when we're looking at specific ad configurations where we're needing to send like an ad tag rather than just assign a creative. And sending an ad tag, for example, is not possible with Ad Canvas Creative, as it creates a automatic placement, which then does not function the same as your standard placements that you've created. So the answer there is yes and no. It's always really important to check with the publisher if you're having a deal, if you're doing a deal with a publisher, or you're wanting to show in specific inventory. It's really important to reach out to the publisher and just kind of put the scenario across to them, and then often you'll be able to work on a solution.
Okay, great, thank you. Leading on from that, I think nicely into the next question is, someone has asked whether we can use first-party data to create personalized ads, and if so, would that counter the privacy changes that are expected to come through in next year onwards?
Good question. Again, I think to answer the second part of the question first, I think a lot of us are maybe looking at the kind of let's take a considered approach to a wait and see kind of scenario with the first party cookie data, and how this is going to impact on us, specifically with the DV360 creatives, so with the Ad Canvas creatives. I can't speak specifically to how that's going to play out. However, the value of your first party data that you've gathered from your own website is usually going to be relatively robust, as long as you have the right permissions for those users to be in your audience. So one particular method that some users, that some businesses are using at the moment to build their audiences, is they're providing offers like sign up and you could win a voucher, or sign up and you can get access to these special deals. And through that process, they're having people opt into their first-party data lists, which then is a more robust and privacy secure kind of list there. However, That said, there are other methods which within the data-driven creative, within that ad canvas creative, for us to set up rules. So for example, it could be like a cookie-less scenario where you're looking simply at website categories or at time of day, for example.
Okay, great. And then the last question I'm going to ask is, I think it's quite a practical one. So someone has asked to send data from Campaign Manager to DV360. What initial steps should be taken?
Okay, so if you are, so when we say send data, I'm going to speak specifically about the creative information and the audiences. Those are the two, creative audiences and floodlights. Those are the three kind of big aspects that we're wanting to share. So you're going to want to connect your DV360 advertiser to your parent campaign. So to your parent advertiser in Campaign Manager. And what that's going to allow you to do is share the floodlight configuration with that DV360 advertiser. And then you want to go down a step as well, and you're wanting to, in your advertiser, you're also wanting to associate with specific sites from Campaign Manager. Remember, those sites is how we want to maybe aggregate channels or mediums. And we want to associate that site ID with your DV360 advertiser. And through those two links, there is also some other ancillary checkboxes about passing data back to Campaign Manager. Between those two factors, you're able to link your floodlight configuration, your audiences, and your creatives.
Okay, great. And I know I said that was the last question, but now I have my own question that I'm going to ask. In your opinion, if you're learning, if you're learning one platform, or I guess the question is, should you be proficient across all of these three platforms, DV360, CM, and SA360, or would you focus on one to kind of really hone your expertise there, or if you want to be a DV360 platform expert, is it beneficial to kind of have an in-depth understanding of Campaign Manager as well? So they're all one, like many questions rolled up into one, I think, which is the skills needed across all.
So I think, I'll answer from my personal perspective, and then maybe from a practical side. From my personal perspective, I think the more we know as advertisers and as digital marketers and campaign managers, the more we're able to include in our campaign strategy, and the more complete and maybe a more complete and efficient marketing campaigns we can build. So that would mean, if we're able to bring things in like attribution and seeing how different channels interact with each other and bringing that into our DV360 campaigns. So that's the information that you would see in Campaign Manager. And if you're able to find that and understand it and use it to inform your future campaign decisions, that's a really powerful aspect of your campaign managing ability. That said, on a kind of a practical level, you are able to use DV360 as a standalone unit, and you are able to use Campaign Manager as a standalone unit, and the same story for SA360. In terms of standalone unit, it's a bit of a tricky one because it does often require still an integration with Campaign Manager. However, there is no further need for Campaign Manager if you're using SA360, in the sense that you can do a lot of your data reporting in SA360. Again, if you're wanting to, frankly, to be the best campaign manager, the more you know, the better your campaigns are going to be. I would say that if you're using DV360, a really good knowledge of Campaign Manager is very important. Not vital, but important. And with SA360, you're a little more kind of free from your relationship with Campaign Manager, and you actually don't need to know too much about DV360. You can focus on the search ads aspect of it. The real strong link, and we'll discuss this in our next section, the real strong link there between SA360 and Campaign Manager is actually our floodlights and our floodlight configuration, which then allows for conversion tracking from search ads.
Okay, great. I won't elaborate more on that question. I do have more questions around it, but I'll just corner you on the side. And
Cool.
we can also add them to the list of questions that that we correlate and share with people. So next quiz, and if everyone would like to rejoin, that would be great. Got 27 people in, so I'm just going to get straight in. Okay, what is the name of the space for creative teams to add assets, design, custom, and dynamic creative variations? Is it Add Maker, Add Canvas, or Add Designing Space? Add Canvas, 100% correct. Well done, everyone. Just have one question there. And now it's time for another very quick break, this time only 5 minutes. So we'll see you all back at 25 past. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. I hope you enjoyed your break and you're all back with us. We're going to start on our last section, which is going to take us to the close of our session, and we're going to have some questions at the end, which we can all chat about and hopefully get through any big concerns that are left at the end. Cool. So we're going to briefly take a look at the audience module. So this is the audience exploring module in DV360. And it allows us to do a variety of things. So one of those things is to take a look at the audience size across various platforms. So you'll see we've got a display size, a YouTube size, and a mobile app size. The reason that those are different is because we've actually, there is certain audience sharing rules, which in some cases allow for sharing across platforms and in some cases don't. So the current set of rules, if a user has been, if you've captured a user from a YouTube campaign, you're not actually able to target those users on a with banner ads, for example, or outside of YouTube. And so kind of, you kind of need to work through some of those audience limitations as you get through the platform. But a really potent tool, this, it does show us the type of audience, the source, and again, the size, as well as the name, and kind of, we can explore each of those and see the rules that are setting those audiences up. One of my favorite tools in DV360 is called the audience analysis tool. And what this allows us to do is it allows us to profile a certain audience and then explore and see the overlapping audiences we have there. So in this case, we've chosen just one test seed audience, and we can see it's majority female. Most of the users seem to be between 25 and 34. Most seem to be not parents, the higher end of household income, and majority are on desktop. So that's some basic demographic info that it gives us. And then it starts to give us the overlaps between interest audiences, behavioral audiences, first-party audiences, so other audiences of ours. Perhaps there's an overlap between these two audiences. And then third-party audiences, which are third-party audience providers, for example, Blue Kai, and Audience Generate, et cetera, et cetera. So what is an important kind of takeaway from this is that we're able to see how users interacted with our landing page, and then see how we can maybe target more of those kinds of users. So we can see here that home decor enthusiasts, art and theater aficionados, and frequently eats dinner out are three of the affinity audiences that have a high level of overlap with our first party audience. So a really powerful tool for us here to explore and find new audiences. In terms of overlap similarity index, the higher the number, the more similar. The lower the number, the less kind of similarity there is between that audience and another audience. So just briefly, the geographic distribution, similar tool, but it does show us our geographic breakdown of our audiences and where they would be. So if you're running international campaigns, this is a really useful tool. You can also split by region, dedicated marketing area if you're targeting the US, or postal code in some scenarios, not all. Cool, so we're going to take a look at reporting. And again, it looks relatively similar to campaign manager style reporting. There are also two kinds of reports we can run. The one is called an instant report, as you see on the left, and the one on the right is called an offline report. The instant report provides great overview for day-to-day data, and the offline report is really one where you have access to all of those dimensions and metrics, and you're going to create nice, rich, complex reports. So our instant reporting allows for an overview of performance with basic performance metrics and filters. So we can filter for things like advertiser currency, partner, region, insertion order, and things like that. And then we can add in various dimensions and metrics around performance and other attributes, including some limited conversion data. And as well as video information, fees, and serving, et cetera, et cetera. So offline report types, these are just a couple of them that I think are really relevant for us. So we've got our standard report where you can include more or less most of the metrics and dimensions. They aren't specific restrictions on that one. We've got an audience report where you can see audience performance, cookie pool size, and an audience comparison. So to see which audience performs better. Inventory availability, which is a really useful report. So it allows you to see what the available impressions for a specific creative or on a specific website or with a specific deal, so that you have an insight into how many impressions or clicks are available, how many users there are looking at those potential placements. So your reach report will tell you how many unique users, unique clicks, and unique cookies you've actually reached. So that's a really important tool when you're looking at like an awareness generation campaign, to see how many unique users you've reached over the course of your campaign. And then your YouTube report has some of the really specific YouTube features, so YouTube views and performance, and then your YouTube conversions as well. So like I said, while YouTube is part of, it functions neatly within DV360, there are some additional elements that are built on top of DV360, which increase the functionality of your YouTube reporting. So an example unique reach report. So a unique reach report shows the number of unique cookies or users who have been served impressions or interacted with your campaign. So here we can see impression reach, click reach, total reach, and average impression frequency. So that means that how many impressions on average are users seeing in this campaign. The higher the number, the more impressions users are seeing, and the closer we're getting to potentially spamming. And the lower the number, the less notice users may have taken of your advertising campaign, because they've only been exposed to it a few times, as opposed to kind of over the space of a few weeks getting exposed to it 10 or 12 or 15 or 20 times. So inventory availability, again, speaks to really an important aspect around predicting how our campaigns perform and how many impressions are actually available out there. So you're able to sort by you're able to filter, by country, partner, advertiser, the list goes on. You're able to include dimensions like creative size, creative format, creative type, the exchange, the website, the day, etc., etc. And then you're able to take a look at your potential impressions and unique cookies as well. It is based on the previous, say, for example, 7 days in this case. So it will give you a relatively sturdy indication of the 7 days that are to come. So just talking about how these modules can work together. So we can collect all of our audiences and all of our data through our floodlight tags, our customer relationship management programs, Analytics 360, campaign manager, pieces of technology like LiveRamp or Weborama. We're then able to analyze that data in DV360 using the audience analysis and see what kind of people, what kind of users we're really actually communicating with. And then we're able to activate that data with an audience strategy, including with inclusions, exclusions, so targeting these people, excluding those people because we've seen that they don't perform well, for example. And then you're able to customize your messaging using something like Ad Canvas and data-driven creative. So just a really nice little neat summary of how these modules do function together. So some important tips for success, and I remember right at the beginning, somebody did mention that they'd be interested in some tips. So here we are. Be data-driven. I would say one of the really, really important aspects of all of this is for us to continuously focus on what the data is telling us, rather than trying to fit in with what is available. We can always look at what the data tells us and take a human contextual approach to that. And in practicality in DV360, that means using data-driven creatives from Ad Canvas, where you're able to make really specific creatives for specific audiences or specific users, and actually really talk to those users on a personal or individual level. So be engaging. It's in a world of noise, as we saw out with the example of Abu Dhabi tourism and travel, we noticed, and hospitality and travel, we noticed that the engaging creative formats that were used actually spoke to users on a more really personal level than a standard banner ad that was not personalized to an individual. So really important to use those high impact creatives as they do increase on-site activity as well as brand lift. And lastly, be present everywhere. Native and audio ads provide promising opportunities for us to reach new users in a non-disruptive environment. So that really is something to consider going forward, is how non-disruptive potentially audio and native ads are, as they do fit in with native ads, fit in with your content, and you've got your audio ads, which are then part of your audio streaming content. Cool, so we're going to pop on to our last section. And we're just going to have an overview of Search Ads 360 and how it fits into GMP. We're going to look at very briefly at smart bidding, at some of the commerce solutions, and some of the other features of SA360. So as you can see, Campaign Manager does sit in the middle of these two, and both SA360 and DV360 are connected to Campaign Manager, and through that you're able to share floodlights, which is the ultimate importance here, because that's where your attribution is coming from, and that's where your measurement and your conversion measurement is coming from. So effectively, what we're able to see from a floodlight perspective in Campaign Manager and DV360, that does pull through to SA360. So we can say users who are targeted this DV360 campaign, let's say a newsletter sign up is the conversion point. That floodlight activity is viewable in DV360, it's viewable in Campaign Manager, and it's viewable in SA360, the exact same one. So that way, Campaign Manager is able to measure how many users are individually actually converting on that floodlight across various channels and put the picture together for us. It's important to note that if your platforms are linked, Campaign Manager will set the time zone and your currency for your linked GMP accounts. So Campaign Manager is going to be the one that sets that time zone and currency for your linked GMP accounts. Just important to remember that. So SA360, Search Ads 360 allows for the management, automation, and optimization of search engine marketing in real time. So that's on your search results pages. So for example, on Bing or on Yahoo or on Google, you're able to actually manage your search campaigns in search and shopping, if we're going to split that out, in real time. So you can make real time adjustments as well as implementing real time bidding algorithms to help with your bidding per auction, as opposed to setting a flat fee per day. You're actually able to individually drill down into each auction and each user and use that wide variety of signals available to SA360, as well as your floodlight data, to put together the ultimate bidding strategy for your campaigns. So let's take a step back. So essentially, one of the important things here is to understand how the search engine is going to function. So the main goal is to serve the most relevant ad for us to various users. And then Google has a number of ways of actually making this happen. And it's largely, if we're going to look at our Google Ads kind of context, largely what we're doing is we're taking SA360's advanced abilities, its connection to GMP, and we're plugging that into Google Ads. So we're able to improve the number of signals and the quality of the signals provided to the bidding algorithms, which then actually work within SA360 to help to address the need of being really highly relevant in individual auctions to specific users. So okay, let's not drill down into search engine marketing. I see we're getting a little short on time. So let's just look at some of the benefits of Search Ads 360. And so SA360's smart bidding tool empowers us with the controls to optimize towards specific business objectives. So you're actually able to create a custom, in a sense, a custom conversion, and allow for SA360 to create bidding strategies around those custom conversions, and then how best to achieve those with the campaigns to which those bidding strategies are inevitably applied. So this allows us to define and optimize towards precise business objectives. It allows us to get more granular on our controls with optimization, so looking at really specific situations. And it allows us to benefit from full transparency and actually monitoring the progress on each of those goals on a granular level within Search Ads 360. So just a neat little slide on the differences between Google Ads and SA360. So SA360 is able to support multiple engines, which means that we're able to include multiple search engines. So that would be including Microsoft Ads, formerly known as Bing, for example. So multiple engine support, flexible optimizations based on different tags and goals that we can set up. You're able to actually draw a web query and use that for automated reporting in other systems. Super granular data compared to Google Ads. There are budget management features which Google Ads does not allow for. Google Ads has its own budgeting systems which are maybe less granularly controllable than SA360. You can include business data and events, so what's happening in the greater business context, what's happening in the environment around this. Is it around a peak, are you around peak season? Is this a peak day, or is there a national holiday coming up? And perhaps you want to exclude that data so that SA360 doesn't think that every Tuesday from now on is quiet, or that things are quiet. It's just that it so happened that this Tuesday there was a national holiday, so your online activity was less. So you're able to actually exclude that from the context of the bidding algorithms. And then inventory management connects to your feed from your Google Merchant Center and actually provides various aspects which allow for individual product search ads to be created alongside your shopping ads. So the inventory management does require quite a bit of setup, but it does take the form of a relatively dynamic process once it is constructed and functioning. So we're just going to look at how SA360 adds value here. So it allows you to manage, like I said, multiple engines. So Google Ads or previous AdWords, Bing, Yahoo, etc. Able to manage multiple advertisers under a single agency network. So if you have multiple business units under a single network, this is a really powerful tool for allowing those to work together. Advanced reporting options, including with the web query report, which can be imported into other platforms. Near real-time data visibility, there is a syncing aspect which you do need to kind of set up, and you can get it to sync relatively quickly and pull that real-time data through. So you're able to look at cross-channel conversion attribution, and really specifically, you're able to look at those deduplicated conversions that we've been speaking about. So counting conversions once, not multiple times per channel. Okay, so I think we spoke about this slide yesterday, and it's a great time to bring it up because we're at the point where we can take a step back and slowly look at how these aspects do fit together, and the links between them. So the floodlights, the creatives, the conversions, those kinds of things, how those play together, and how they work together in Google Marketing Platform in GMP to create a more complete picture of attribution. And again, this slide, we're now able to see a little more about how we can get to controlling the reality of how users interact online across various platforms that we've spoken about today, as well as the tracking capabilities of Campaign Manager and of GMP. And hopefully we're able to use GMP to get to the ultimate point of customer centricity. And we can see that if we look at our media and creative strategies, we're able to use DV360 and Campaign Manager, our data and audiences, Campaign Manager and GA360. Looking at the customer journey and our complete picture of attribution, again, GA and Campaign Manager. And then in our analytics aspect, we can look at our GA360 and our Campaign Manager 360. So really taking that 360-degree view of our customer centricity and looking at all of the touch points that we can influence through DV360, Campaign Manager, and Search Ads 360, and being part of those customer moments when it really matters. Cool. I think after that, we've got a little bit of time for some questions. For those of you who have some questions or have submitted some questions for us, so I'm more than happy to field those. Now I think.
Okay, thank you, Julian. So we have a few questions now, and they are. Can we exclude? So, okay, there's a few more on the audience module from DV360. So perhaps I can. No, actually, there it's all good. We covered them all. Audience module, and I say, yeah, sorry. Can we include or exclude first and third party audience within audience profiling?
Okay. So the way, okay, so that's, sorry, I'm just trying to think in the practicality. So I think that's approaching from the opposite side, where we would be saying, let's look at this specific audience, and it would show you the overlaps of that audience with others. But if you're saying, I want to exclude this part or this group of users, this bucket of users from this audience, there isn't necessarily a straightforward way of doing that in the audience analysis tool. There are a couple of ways around that, including creating new audiences to do that specific aspect. However, if you say, for example, you want to exclude, I'm just thinking, you've got a bucket of users and you want to exclude people between 24 and 35 from that audience. That's unfortunately not possible in its clean form in the audience analysis tool. However, there are ways to create that audience and then do the analysis.
Cool, thank you. Next one, still relating to audience. What is the audience composition within DV360? Or audience composition report, sorry.
Okay, so what is it? So it takes into account what the users that are making up your audience, and it splits out those users, and it also is going to take a look at those audience reports. That whole section is really quite powerful in terms of exploring your actual users that not only have interacted with your campaign because you've been targeting them, but also additional users that you weren't necessarily targeting that are also part of your kind of successful audiences, I suppose you could refer to them as. So again, the audience composition report is just going to help you to dive down into who makes up that audience and what's all, I suppose, to put it colloquially, what's all part of it.
Okay, great. Now we're on to SA360, and this is a question that I've heard asked many, many times. I'm sure you've also answered it many times. What is the difference between search in Google Ads and SA360?
Okay, so and I know that we did kind of go quite speedily through the SA360 section. So one of the big things to bear in mind is that SA360. Okay, let's just pretend like SA360 is not going to deal with the other engines, and let's just focus on Google Ads to answer this question. So SA360 is not able to function without Google Ads. So all of your the vast majority of your campaign builds, your adding of keywords, adding of ads, extensions, ad groups, all of that kind of thing is done in Google Ads, as you have been used to doing forever and a day. And then what happens is SA360 then plugs in to your Google Ads system or to your various search engine, and then will enhance the capabilities of it. and included in that would be the SA360 bid strategies, the floodlight tracking capabilities, the ability to toggle on smart bidding, so auction time bidding, and those kinds of things, and as well as including your business data, so the contextual environment for your business, as well as your budget and bid plan. So to say, we're wanting to spend X amount between this date and that date. SA360 has a more reliable system in some, and I think that's a bit of a dubious thing to say, but maybe Google Ads is a little more loose with some of its daily budgeting and its overall budgeting compared to SA360. SA360 you can sometimes pull a more consistent budget plan using the tools available in there. So the short answer is you have to have Google Ads to have SA360. And SA360 provides advanced capabilities for Google Ads or any other search engine that you plug SA360 into.
Okay, great. Well, then, which leads nicely on to the very final question. Can we do remarketing from SA360 to DV360?
Good question. Okay, so to take it a step back, you can actually do remarketing from Google Ads to DV360. However, you're not really able to build audiences that say something like, if somebody has clicked on this Google Ads campaign, or for example, this SA360 campaign, within the platform itself, there are ways to get around that. And that would be using a platform like GA or GA360 to go ahead and build out those more complex audience definitions. That said, yes, the answer is yes. You can push audiences from Google Ads to DV360. And those audiences would be very similar to what you can build in GA, minus some of the capabilities. So that would often be like landing page audiences or audiences like that, rather than clicked on this specific search ad. There are more capabilities in GA360 to build out those kinds of audiences.
Okay, great. So it's really all about the GMP stack and all things 360 to get the.
You can really do everything. It's just a matter of which aspects of each platform you're pulling together and using.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you very much, Julian. You're off the hook now. And we are through to the final quiz. So we'll go straight through to that. And again, just thanks to Julian. I think that was a fairly long stint to get through. So from my perspective, you did really well. Let's see the last few questions. Are we ready? 27 people in. Let's see. True or false? Did that skip one, I think? No. True or false, DV360 allows for projecting of available inventory through an inventory availability report. And 2, 1. True or false? The answer is true, and everyone else got that right. Everyone got that right. Next one. What are the two main sections in DV360 reporting? Saved reports and quick reports, slow reports, fast reports, instant reports, and offline reports. Let's see. So 83% went with instant and offline, 17 with saved and quick, and the 83% were correct. And the final, wow, we have the same winner, so Samar Salim. Congratulations to you. I hope that you were one of the people, I think yesterday said that you said you knew quite a bit about all things programmatic and GMP. I hope you were one of those people, and if not, you've learned an awful lot. So well done to you and to Phil and Noor, she and Nanis, our top 5. Well done, guys. I'm going to also, if we've got a couple of minutes, I would ask you to please stay on. We've got a feedback report. Okay, my slides are going backwards for some reason, but we do have a feedback questionnaire. We'd really like you to tell us what you think. And to do that, please just scan that QR code, or else you'll see within Slido, you can, I've just put an announcement in Slido, and there's a link to the Google form. There's literally just 3 questions in it, and they're like tick box questions, so it'll take you about a minute. Please do take the time. It really does help us. And I think that is it for today. Oh yeah, also just one last thing. We are going to send on a follow-up to this. So I think you can expect to hear from Cara, and she'll send through some more details. And that's it. Thank you very much, everyone, and enjoy the rest of your day and your week.
Thanks very much, everybody.